Good afternoon and welcome back to the 120s. Today is a very special episode of the 120s. We are talking about the ALFIE TYCH. So how about this? How exciting is this? If you've been watching the channel for a while, you will remember that we bumped into Dave Faulkner, the guy who designed this and has manufactured this camera. We bumped into him at the first Analogue Spotlight event last year. Since then, since that video, Dave Faulkner has completed his Kickstarter, got fully funded, gone into production with the ALFIE TYCH, and this is now available to everybody to buy. First thing to mention is I did a really interesting interview with Dave Faulkner from ALFIE Cameras that I was going to drop into like the middle of this video, but I tried to cut it down to just a couple of minutes, and Dave says way too much really interesting stuff, so I'm just going to stick the whole thing, run it quite long, but I'll stick it on the end of this video. I would recommend you hang around for that, because what Dave has to say about the manufacturing process, future plans for ALFIE cameras and all the rest of that stuff is really interesting, so do stick around for that. But let's talk about the camera. First thing is, it is a half frame camera, which means it takes standard 35mm film. So on a 24 exposure roll, you'll get 48. On a 36, you'll get 72. And the negatives that it creates are correspondingly small. Just so you know, if you're watching this video and you're not really in the film world at the moment, 35mm film is readily available from lots of different places, and it's just normal 35mm film that you put in here. So let's start at the front. The first thing you will notice is the big circle at the front, and you'll notice that the circle has 4 holes in it, and you will also notice that the circle rotates, and that is because you have 4 lenses here. In fact, I've got the cheap version of this camera, so there are 2 versions, one with a fancy lens, one without the fancy lens. I don't shoot much 35mm, so I went for the cheap version. I think this video is going to be quite unique on YouTube for a little while, because almost everything I've seen has been people who have bought the expensive version. So there aren't too many of these cheap versions out there. I don't think they were quite as popular as the ones with the fancy lens. But essentially there are 4 holes in the front. When the lens is in the middle of the camera, i.e. here, then it's the taking lens. So this is a meniscus lens, single element meniscus lens. If we rotate that way, we now have an f56 zone plate. We take it one more step in that direction, and we have an f125 pinhole. And then there is an empty hole into which would fit the fancy f8 lens. That's your lenses. We'll talk more about those as I get out and take some photos with it. Next thing to talk about is your shutter. It is an electronically controlled shutter controlled by an onboard computer. The electronically controlled shutter will do 30-second exposures all the way down to 1/500th of a second exposures. Within the onboard computer, we have 4 different modes. There are 3 automatic modes and 1 manual mode. The 3 automatic ones correspond with your 3 lens options. There is an f8 automatic, there is an f56 automatic, and there is an f125 automatic. The fancy lens, the posh lens, is also an f8, so that f8 automatic mode will cover you using either the meniscus lens or the fancy lens. Push and hold the button to get into the menus, and you have the option to change the ISO of the film that you're using. You have the option to manipulate the shutter count up or down. You can do whatever you want with that. You have the option to add a delay to the shutter. And then the final option in that menu is flash/remote, and allows you to either use a flash or use a remote release. I don't have either, not going to be talking about that. To power the onboard computer, there is a battery inside here, and that charges through the USB-C socket, and I can tell you from my experience so far, it lasts forever. Red button is the shutter button. We have this viewfinder, which is obviously upright, because in its natural form, if you take a photo like this, you are going to get a vertical, a portrait orientation photograph. On here is the knob to open the back of the camera. You unscrew that and then it opens that way. I'm not going to do that right now because I've got film inside and I will ruin it, and I still have like 8 million shots to take on that film. This is your knob for rewinding your film, and then pull it out to release the film. Wind it on here. In order to wind on one frame, you start winding, that white bit will disappear, and then when the next white bit comes in, you're on to the next frame. And that's pretty much all there is to talk about. We'll talk about the rest of the features on this camera whilst we're out shooting with it. So let's head out and take some photos. I'll see you out there. Okay, let's open with the obligatory selfie. God help me, I do love a selfie. And I can confirm the ALFIE TYCH is good for selfies. So first test for the Titch, I went away on vacation with my family down to Cornwall and took the Titch with me to be getting some nice holiday snaps. So obviously there's going to be a lot of photos of my kids living their best lives. And as I've got 72 frames per roll to play with, there really is no reason not to just snap away. It's great. I've got so used to shooting like 9 or 12 frames per roll, or even shooting single sheets of film, that suddenly I'm using this like a digital camera, just not thinking too hard about what I'm taking photos of, taking 2 frames just for the hell of it, just to make sure I've got one of them. Really using it just to snap away. I am going to put it through its paces a little bit more in a bit, so do stick around for that. But it's really getting some nice results, stuff I'm happy with. And with the option of shooting on an automatic shutter, it means I'm not asking my kids to stand still while I do a light meter reading. I'm just able to snap away, which is great. I did sort of half-heartedly test out a couple of the other lenses with some unusual results, some more investigation needed there. I will be putting a black and white film in it next in this video and doing a proper test of the pinhole and the zone plate, so stick around for that. These ones are great. Don't actually know how I got these. I don't think it was the zone plate, but it might have been. All in all, as a camera to take away with me on vacation, take snaps of the kids, it is fantastic. It's really, really good, and I really enjoyed it for that. Just enough automation and just enough electronics so that a lot of the more time-consuming stuff is taken out of your hands. One thing, of course, is there is no automatic wind-on, and I forgot quite a few times, actually. And with 72 frames, I also got into a bit of a habit of being unsure whether I'd wound on, and so just taking 2 frames every time I stopped. So I'd get the camera out, having not used it for like half an hour, take a photo, and then think, did I wind on, or have I just taken a double exposure on that single frame? So then I'd wind on and take the same photo again, which of course defeats the object if you're getting 72 frames to a film, because I'm essentially doing everything twice. But you know, whatever, I'll get used to it. Next thing is to load up a roll of black and white, so a roll of Kodak Tri-X 400 ISO, and head out and give this pinhole a bit of a proper test. So let's see how we got on with that. Right then, we're all set up. Titch on a tripod. It's raining a little bit and I don't know anything about the weather sealing of this camera, so I'm going to keep my hat over it just to keep the majority of the water off it. I want to frame something here probably, and that is telling me 3 minutes 1 second. Now, I do not have the remote. Is there any chance of me holding this shutter button down for 3 minutes without bumping it? I think it's unlikely, but we won't know until we try. So let us try. Go. Ooh. So what I did not realise is that the bulb setting on here is a toggle switch. So whereas bulb would normally be bulb hold and then release when you want the shutter to close again, on this is a toggle switch. It's an on-off, so it's more like a T rather than a B. So you push the button once, so we're in manual, we're in bulb, 400, and we're open. And that's really good actually, because that's I am now hands-free and I am not shaking the camera. It's very clever. Good thinking, Dave. You should tell people about that. Right, we've got 30 seconds. Let's leave it a bit longer. Right, we're coming up to the end of it, so let's push again to close. And that's an exposure done. So, oh, this is quite nice. Let's do this. Let's do an upright one. Here we go. It's raining a fair bit now. Do not want to get this camera too wet. Let's go 2 minutes. Off we go. All right, shutter open. Start the timer. Right, it's starting to rain a fair bit now. I have a feeling I'm going to have to get myself out of this rain fairly shortly. Next rainy scene, we are here. So here we go. Shutter is open, timer is started. Timer is done. Let's set up on this, let's do it. Switch on the Titch, check the settings, still on bulb. Make sure everything is clear of the lens here, and shutter is open. Timer has started. There we go, and click. Okay, so having some problems here, it would appear. Obviously I'm not aware of it. Didn't realise until I developed the film. But some of these shots are coming out super blurry. On reflection, I suspect that the wet weather and the pinhole didn't mix very well. So it is a 0.2 millimeter pinhole, which gives you that f125 at 25 mil. And of course, 0.2 mil, it's not going to take much for water to block that hole. And I think that might be what happened on a lot of those shots. Pretty quickly knocked it on the head because it was getting too wet and I was getting absolutely drenched. So here's the end of the wet weather stuff, and then we'll move on from there to the sunny day. Right, then we're back out again today with a very different weather, and I have come up to St Arolda's Church, which is a place which has appeared on the channel before. Lovely blue sky with clouds, so the red filter is on straight away. Here's the Titch. I think we'll just start here. I'll figure out how I'm going to meter this. So we're going to give 3 stops for the red filter. Pinhole assist, we're going pinhole lens. So what I'll probably do is I'll shoot on manual, but I'm not going to bulb it this time. I'm going to, so half a second plus 3 stops is 1 second, 2 seconds, 4 seconds. And I can do that with the shutter. 2 second delay. And that's that one done. Let's shoot out that way. And off we go. Okay. Let's point in this direction. So a delay of 5 seconds. It's ready to rock. 5 seconds counting down, and then listen for the click. 8 second exposure. I don't think it needs that, but there we go, all done. And we've got 1/4 of a second, so half a second, 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 second delay, 2 second shutter. And we're done. Go down the hill over there, you get a nice view looking back up. And here we go. I'll step back a bit so my shadow's not quite so prominent. 2 second delay, shutter open, shutter closed. So there we go. That concludes my testing of the ALFIE TYCH. I didn't really get an opportunity to put the zone plate through its paces much. I did use it a couple of times before I really knew what it was, and the results were a little bit like... I'm just going to interrupt very quickly to explain what a zone plate actually is, because I realised I didn't do it anywhere else. Also known as a Fresnel zone plate, after the guy who did a lot of work examining the phenomena. The famous Augustin Jean Fresnel, also famous for Fresnel lenses, Fresnel lights, the undisputed king of concentric circles. And a Fresnel zone plate looks like this. So assume the white is clear and the black rings, opaque black rings around a central clear hole. This is what a zone plate would look like if it was this big, but of course the zone plate in the Titch is 1 millimeter across. 1 millimeter from side to side. The central hole is the same size as the pinhole, is 0.2 millimeters, and then you have 0.8 millimeters of concentric circles on either side. Light passes through the clear bits and bends around the black bits, and the distance between the rings and the thickness of the rings can be tuned to manipulate specific wavelengths of light and create some really interesting effects if you use it properly, which I didn't. I have since chatted to Dave Faulkner, the designer of the Titch, and asked a bit more about that zone plate. And it has some really interesting applications. What you're kind of looking for is probably color photos, and specifically what we call specular highlights. So high contrast images with pinpoint highlights, and it should make some really interesting effects around those. So I think that is a whole other video potentially on zone plates. They are really fascinating. If you want to know more about zone plates and this zone plate specifically, then hang around to the end of the video and watch the interview with Dave, and you'll hear a lot more about that zone plate, where it came from, why he did it, and the design of this zone plate specifically. Overall though, I am really chuffed with this little camera. I'm not going to be selling it, I'm going to be keeping it, and I will be using it fairly regularly. To, you know, family holidays, days out, stuff where I still want to be shooting film, but I want to be snapping away, not worry too much about constantly changing, not even fret too much about, you know, whether that's a shit shot or not. I can just snap away. One thing I did find was that with the half frame and getting 72 frames to a roll of film, that roll of film lasts forever. I mean, it's great. You're saving a fortune on developing costs and on film. But if you want to change a film, if you're thinking like, oh, I'm going to shoot some black and white tomorrow, and you realise I've still got another 30 frames to get through, I've barely started this film. All in all though, super chuffed with my ALFIE TYCH. Don't click off this video yet. There is an interview with Dave Faulkner coming at the end of this. But if you're not currently subscribed, please do subscribe so you don't miss out on any of my videos. Looking forward to lots more exciting adventures with the ALFIE TYCH. Also hoping that there are going to be lots more cameras and other photographic things and bits and bobs in the future from ALFIE cameras. Okay, on to a fascinating chat with Dave Faulkner. Hello Dave. Last time I spoke to you was Analogue Spotlight 22, which would have been now 18 months ago.
Yeah,
And
I remember.
you were about to start your Kickstarter campaign.
I think I was optimistic in expecting to start my Kickstarter campaign then, but I did get there in September of the same year. So
It didn't take you long. I remember watching your Instagram account and stuff for updates and seeing when things were coming out, and it didn't feel like there was a huge delay.
once we got back, then it really started to happen quicker than I expected. By the 17th of September, which was the date we launched the Kickstarter, and I know the date very well because it's my birthday as well.
Well, you launched on your birthday.
Launched on my birthday at the National Photography Show. 2.5 weeks later, we were backed.
Amazing. Just like that. It was that simple,
Yeah.
huh? Well, have you enjoyed it, Dave? Have you enjoyed the journey?
I enjoyed it. I'd said the most. I enjoyed it a lot, but the challenges were stressful.
I bet.
The shutter I'd originally designed into the camera, tried to order it about literally a few days after getting backed, and it had gone obsolete. So I had to then spend the next 2 months sourcing a new shutter, and then another month and a half redesigning the internals of the camera to take it.
This is your background, though, right? This is what you do. You're sort of design engineer. Is that what?
Yeah, that's right. So I trained in industrial design, and then very quickly specialised in medical device and design engineering of sort of small, intricate injection molded components and devices. So it's something I've done for years. I've done did a bit in consumer products as well. So I kind of cut my teeth in some high tech spaces, which I think gave me the right skills to allow me to execute the project.
So you're saying you have enjoyed it. Have you had a smile on your face throughout, or have there been highs and lows?
So I would say the lowest point, and it's quite fresh in my memory, is building what it's about. I've built about 130 cameras now. And I thought the building would, just be turning the handle and we'd get them built and it wouldn't be too painful.
Yeah.
But the time involved was a gross underestimation. There was a point in September when I thought, I'm never going to make it. There was one thing that I offered Kickstarter backers the opportunity to personalize the cameras with a little message on the screen when it started up.
Yes. Yeah.
And that actually made my life quite a bit harder.
You wish you hadn't done it. I don't think you didn't charge for that either, did you? Or did you?
No, it was just I thought I could
Nice
do
touch.
this, and I felt that we'd been a little bit late on delivery, so why not offer that little extra to people?
Do you know? I don't think I asked you to do anything to mine.
So it might just be, but your backer number might be in there then.
My backer number is there, number 17.
any new camera purchases now, they just get a lovely, simple "have fun" message.
Oh, okay. So mine is special. I like that. That makes me happy. I didn't go for. I went for the cheaper one. Not much of a 35mm shooter. Love the concept. Love what you're doing, and want you to succeed. And therefore, I don't want to get my hands on one and give it a go after talking to you about it, but couldn't justify the extra money on the nice lens. But do you know what? For the purposes that I want it for, which is exactly what I've been doing recently, which is that's the only camera I took with me on holiday, and getting snaps of my kids and still having an analog experience, I've actually really enjoyed it. It's been great, and I'm in the middle of a roll right now of black and white Tri-X 400. Basically trying to put the pinhole and the zone plate through some testing and see what I'm getting out of that. I took it out the other day and it was pissing down with rain, and it was a miserable day and it was horrible. I got myself a 46mm red filter to have some fun with that. 46mm filters, very difficult to find, thanks Dave. And then yeah, it was a miserable day, and I want a sunny day with some blue sky so I can actually use the red filter and do something with it. So one thing I did want to ask you about is this zone plate. So I read it in all your paperwork and then the instructions and the quick start guide and all the rest of it, and it didn't really register. I was just kind of thinking, all right, it's, similar to a pinhole, but then I got back and I was like, what is a zone plate? And I went looking, and they're fascinating.
I'll tell you how it's made. So it's on a piece of film, and it's using a photographic process that's used in PCB manufacture.
Okay.
And so what it has is basically a central clear area that's the same size as your pinhole, so it's 0.2 millimeters. And then around that has concentric rings. And what those concentric rings are designed to do is to allow more light in, but also create interference patterns at certain wavelengths. I've only really had it show up well with color film.
Okay.
And this is when you've got spot highlights. So if you go out and take a sort of evening scene with some lights going on, you get this kind of cool halation glow. And I say halation, it looks like the halation effect you get on some of the cine films. Around any pinpoint highlights. I've not run many test shots on black and white with the zone plate, to be honest with you. So I think these sort of subtle effects tend to be a bit easier to spot with a color film.
Right.
But that said, if you're specifically going out to take, I don't know, car headlights and neon signs and things like that, I'd be very interested to see how that sort of halation effect looks around those highlights. What it tends to happen on the color film is because I've tuned it theoretically to be more on the green side, that it will create a bloom on and create a halation effect. So what it tends to do is turn white or yellow lights. It turns white lights a little more yellow, strangely, and yellow lights turn a little more green.
Fascinating. It's amazing, isn't it? And presumably you tuned that by deciding on the distance between the rings.
It's not just the distance between the rings, but the thickness of the rings as well.
Okay. Yeah.
So it all becomes critical to getting an effect that is pleasing or interesting.
You could spend a lifetime just designing that. I did want to talk about one thing, because I've read a lot of social media stuff, and one thing that comes up a lot is price point. And I am 100% sure that you didn't just, throw a dart at a list of prices. I actually think it's about right, because there are plenty of plastic focus-free point and shoots knocking about. It's not that. And there are plenty of, digital, high-tech, loads of crazy stuff, and it's not that either, the other end of the market. Have you attempted to defend the price point?
When I originally conceived the idea, I had ambitions to have a lower price point on it. But then I was reflecting on it, and the economies of the scale at which we're building them, that lower price point just unfortunately doesn't stack up. Especially, if I was always going to be on a model where I was selling direct to people and achieving that end retail price myself, then maybe there's a bit of scope for a cheaper camera in there. But in order to actually reach some volumes that will support a long-term business, I have to be able to support a wholesale route to market. And the cost of doing such a sophisticated control on the camera at low volumes is quite significant. You have to be talking about tens of thousands of cameras before you can even consider sort of semi-automation on your assembly processes.
The other reason that the price doesn't bother me, and that I think it's good value, is I'm hoping there's going to be more from ALFIE cameras. And obviously the R&D for the next model has to come out of the profit from this model. And so, is there something else in the pipeline?
Yeah, so interestingly, this was not the first camera I designed.
Okay.
And the first camera I designed is more complex, more sophisticated. And I realized quite early on in the development that it would require probably another couple of years to get it to the point of being ready to market. Also, I realized that without a track record and a reputation behind me, its ability to succeed in the market would be somewhat stunted, shall we say. So I shifted tack probably about 6 months into developing that camera onto the Titch as a way to get into the marketplace relatively quickly, to start to build a reputation so that we can put some real foundations into the company. My expectation from that first model of camera is for it to reach a point where it is bringing profits into the company, and it's not there yet. Hopefully, once we get onto future batches, we'll be in profitability from our first model, which would be fantastic. But it has to be able to also help fund the next developments. So the next development is going to be a lens. And I've got a few options on the table, one of which is a lens which would be needed for that more sophisticated camera.
Am I right in thinking that the lenses, I mean, this one, the one that I've got, the cheap one, is a very simple, I think it's a meniscus lens, isn't it?
Yeah.
And is it plastic?
So that's a single element meniscus lens. Very simple design.
Yeah.
Does great sharpness in the middle, but then towards the corners you start to get a bit more kind of chromatic aberrations going on. And for portraits, it's really nice because you get a lovely focus on your subject in the middle.
So that meniscus lens, was that made especially for this camera, or was that an off-the-shelf thing that you picked up somewhere?
That's something that I source. Yeah.
But but it's a pre-existing. It hasn't been built especially for this.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. And the other lens, the
other lens is designed specially for the Titch. So,
okay.
Some people might know Jason Lane.
Yes, I remember reading about this. Okay.
Yeah. So he's kind of the go-to person if you're thinking of doing a low volume lens manufacturing exercise or product. And so I talked with him quite early on in the development of the camera about what might be possible. And it was a real challenge to come up with a design with him that would give us the frame coverage we wanted, but also allow it to work without making the camera much bigger as well. And
the Posh lens, is it plastic or is it glass?
No, it's a 4-element glass lens.
Okay.
It's a rectilinear lens design. And it's got up-to-date glass manufacturing technology and coated optics in there, it actually performs better than a traditional rectilinear design from the early 1900s would perform.
Which when you're out with your Titch, which lens are you using most?
I'd probably use the premium lens most.
Okay. So have I really missed out here by going cheap?
Depends what you want to produce. I think if you want to explore creative photography, then obviously it'd be great if you had the premium lens as well, but you're going to get just as much enjoyment and fun out of those 3 options. And the difference on your premium lens is that it's sharp corner to corner.
Yeah.
It's got more contrast than the meniscus lens, and it just does a better job of reproducing the scene in all its detail, shall we say?
Yeah. Numbers wise, is the next batch is underway? Is it?
So the initial batch and all the components I have support a batch of 200.
Right.
So I've got to complete the building of that batch, and I'm using the sort of last portion of that batch to start training up some of the people who are going to help me build future batches.
Okay.
So the next batch will probably be a bigger batch that we look to build, and then because if we can up our volumes, certainly our batch size volumes on some components, it has a meaningful cost reduction for us. I think lenses is a great example of that. If you want, when we prototyped originally the premium lens, we're talking about over £400 a lens.
Jeez.
Just to make the prototypes. And then once you move up to making them in volume, you're able to bring the price down to a point where you can include them in a camera that's costing sort of £500. So.
Has it been a success?
Definitely. I think in terms of what we were looking for to really get a company off the ground with, it's been brilliant. Some of the feedback I'm getting from people is really inspiring and makes me just want to do more and get the camera out there more. The next challenge for me is how do I turn what I think is a great Kickstarter project into a great business? And that's the journey I'm on now. So,
and presumably you're getting advice from clever business people and stuff.
There's a massive analog film community that you're part of, and there are a lot of people in that community who are successfully making their businesses work. So there's within the community there is that pool of knowledge, and that's what I lean on a lot to try and help me work out what the next step should be. And they're such a great bunch of people that they're so ready and willing to kind of help give you advice and point you in the right direction. It's a phenomenal community to be part of.
It is, isn't it? And we all want the same thing, which is, the community to be strong and to grow. And therefore it makes sense for everybody to help everybody else and try and get as many people to be successful in the element that they're, furthering. And I definitely, I'm behind you 100% and willing you on to be successful and to go on to other things. And that's what I'm really looking forward to. I'm very happy with this. As you will see, when I publish this video, I can be out one day with the 4x5 and I'm out with this the next day. And that's actually good fun. And I can take this on holiday. My wife doesn't scream at me. I normally get an absolute earful when we're packing the car going, you can't take that bag. You can't take those 2 bags. I'm like, this time I didn't take any extra bags. She didn't even see the camera. She didn't know where it was. But definitely, listen, congratulations on getting this one out. And getting as far as you have. And it's a cracking little tool. Dave, thank you so much, mate. Really appreciate it. Mate. And I'll see you soon. All right then, and that is your lot for today from me. Thanks to Dave for sitting through that interview, and congratulations again on getting this camera to market. Go buy one because they're super fun and you should give one a go. All right, bye.